Welcome back to Unit 7. This is part 2 of the 2D Games production video series, and we'll be going through some of the tasks which begin at 2.0 and go through to the end of the unit. So if you haven't done so already, please go to learnplaycompete.com and download some of the task sheets for those units. So these sections are all about bug tracking and game testing. What we'll be doing in the first series is to record any bugs which may have come up in the game. And although you're going to be using the 2D game kit, which should be pretty bug free as long as you're using Unity 2018.4, so we'll be talking about what bugs are and how you do record them if you come across them in your own game development. The way to deal with these bugs is to write a short explanation of what the issue is, document potential fixes, how urgent it is that you get the problem fixed, screenshot any evidence, and basically try and come up with a solution for the bug tracking. Some of the most common bugs that you'll find in games development are to do with things like not attaching colliders to walls so that players end up walking through walls instead of stopping when they hit them, and also possibly some coding errors, which 9 times out of 10 are usually a spelling mistake or you've forgotten a semicolon if you're working in C#. Now it's time to hand your level over to friends and family. They're probably going to be your harshest critics when it comes to testing your level. But what we can do is methodically go through a way of being able to gain some feedback from the testing that goes on when someone plays your level. You'll be able to assess whether the level's too hard or whether it's too easy, where people get stuck, any bottlenecks that come up. And yet you'll be quite surprised how much joy your friends get from telling you how bad your level is. But don't worry about that, they don't know anything. In order to be able to do playtesting effectively, we are going to watch a video from Extra Credits about exactly how to do that process. So let's check that out now.
The playtest is one of the most important parts of game design, but it's also one of the hardest things to do well. There's a lot more to getting useful data out of your players than simply sitting them down in front of your game. So today we're going to talk about playtesting. Now, this isn't the same as the bug testing that you would do if you're a professional tester. I'm talking about the user feedback type of playtest that designers do to help us understand the real quality of our games. Unfortunately, many young designers seem hesitant to go out and playtest. They often feel like their work's not ready to show yet, or that people just won't get it, or that playtesters are only going to give them feedback they already know. Or maybe it's just that showing your work to other people is really tough. It's like reading them your poetry or playing them a song you wrote. By conducting a playtest, you're kind of putting yourself out there. The first major challenge in a designer's career is to overcome this shyness, to fully invest yourself in your work without getting your pride tangled up in it. At playtest, people will say negative things about your design. They will tell you all sorts of things you already know should be in your game, but that the team just hasn't gotten to yet, or you simply don't have the budget to do. But it's important that you don't reject any of this feedback. Don't get defensive or try to explain to the player what'll eventually be in the game. Just embrace it all openly. Write it all down and really listen. Because all of this information has uses. And you have no need to justify yourself to anyone. Your only job is to put out a good game. And the only way to do that is with feedback. So once you've steeled yourself for all the criticism to come, the second thing to know about playtesting is that it is never too early to do it. As soon as you have a prototype, as soon as you have squares moving around on a screen, you can test. In fact, James will often run tests well before he's even got anything digital to work with. Creating a prototype out of a deck of cards, or even getting a bunch of people to run around a room can yield valuable data. Many times, design students will tell him when they go to playtest early in the dev cycle that all anyone tells them are things they already know. But that just means they aren't looking at all the data. As a designer, you have to observe everything. If all you've taken down are just the words your testers said, you haven't looked closely enough. The order that people give their feedback in is almost as important as what they're actually saying. It tells you what's most important to them, and where in your experience they encounter these issues. And make sure to listen closely. You're going to be naturally biased about your game. You have a set of things that you know are wrong with the game that are on your to-do list to fix. So when a tester describes something similar to a problem you already know about, it's remarkably easy to subconsciously think, oh, yeah, I know about that one. Already taken care of it, no problem. When they actually might have been talking about a different problem entirely. Additionally, early testing gives you data that you're going to need for later. Each time you test, you're going to see if the adjustments you made to the game made the issues you encountered better or worse. To do this, you need as many data points as possible. The longer your trend line, the more in-depth your understanding will be. And one final word about early testing. You may be wrong about your game. Embrace that. You may well find that what you thought was the core engagement of your work wasn't what people actually found engaging. Don't reject that. That is the most valuable data you can get. And as anyone who's built a game will tell you, the earlier you make changes, large or small, the cheaper it is to make them. Don't cost everyone else on your team weeks of work just because you were afraid to playtest early. Alright, now let's go over a few quick and dirty rules of how to test. First, try and talk to your players as little as possible. Anything you say to them biases them and prevents you from getting good data. You may feel the need to explain your game before starting, but resist that urge. Let them take a crack at it before you tell them what they should be doing. This will allow you to observe what they naturally want to do in your experience, and gives you a better sense of where they get stuck or what needs to be explained. Once they've had a go or two, then you can inform them. And when observing them, listen carefully for when they vocalize. Anytime your game draws an utterance from them, a sigh, a gasp, a thoughtful, you've either done something right or something very wrong. Also, try and see where they spend most of their time looking in your game. It'll give you deep clues into what they feel is important, and what data they felt like they had to spend most of the time processing. Admittedly, this can be a very hard one to do, and you'll often have to resort to asking the player, unless you can get all high-tech and have a camera set up to record the session. Additionally, create a test survey rather than trying to get everything from simply talking to your players afterward. This will not only allow you to get data from a lot more people at once, it's also unbiased data that can be cleanly turned into metrics if you give your playtesters a 1 to 10 scale question, which I highly recommend doing. It puts less of a burden on your playtester than making them write out whole paragraphs, and it gives you an easy way to know if you're making changes for the better in future tests. Just watch to see if the numbers trend upward or down. Just be sure to leave the playtesters room for comments at the end too, because that's also helpful. When you do talk to your testers, just be aware that as human beings, we all have a tendency to jump to solutions rather than stating the underlying problem. So when a playtester offers you a solution, like there aren't enough power-ups, really dig in and try to establish what underlying problem they're trying to solve. Because you'll often find it's something else, like my gun doesn't feel powerful enough, which may require a totally different solution than the one they offered. Lastly, be aware that we're all hardwired to avoid suffering, so make sure you're testing in an environment where your tester feels okay walking away from your game. If you lock them in a room, or even have them in an environment where they feel socially compelled to play, they'll try to make the best of it. They'll try to get into your game, and that'll deny you one of the most important data points you can get, where your player gives up on your game, or walks away to do something else. Remember, when you launch your game, you're not only going to be competing with all the other games out there, but with every book, every movie, every TV show, even the internet itself, so your game better be ready for it. And if you don't have to worry about NDAs, it can often be fun to grab several of your other game-making friends and test as a group. That at least gives your players other options for what to do with their time. Before we wrap this up, let's talk about who to test with. Test with everyone, but know that the test results you get vary in value. For example, you are the worst tester of your game. You're just too close to it. You're naturally going to test your own game 1,000 times over the course of its creation, but that sort of testing only goes so far. There's all sorts of things that you're going to get used to, things that will become second nature to you that will seem totally alien to anyone picking up your game for the first time, so you need other people. Oh, and as a rule of thumb, if you think the difficulty on your game is just about right, it's probably way too hard. Next, family and friends. Second worst testers. They're biased, they can't help it. Next comes the hardcore. Hardcore players are often the most willing to test, but unless they're the only audience you're looking for, and they are a niche, you need to find other testers too. As hardcore players, we simply have too much ingrained in us from the thousands of hours we've spent playing these things. You're really looking for people without preconceptions or biases. People who like games but aren't in any way invested in them. Strangers who owe nothing to you, or better still, know nothing about you. So who makes the best tester? Well, in my experience, little kids. They may not be your audience, but if they are, you can always count on them to be open, eager, and 100% honest. Well, I hope that was useful. Good luck honing those games to perfection. We'll see you next week.
So, as you can see from the video, some great hints and tips there on how to effectively playtest your level, and some things that you may have not have thought about beforehand while you're doing this. Things like not telling the test group that anything about your game whatsoever, so as not to muddy the waters. So we'll look at task 1. Download the questionnaire from learnplaycomplete.com. Ask your peers, ask your friends to fill in the questionnaire after they have had a go on your level. Then we'll be uploading that questionnaire back to Google Drive. Task 2. Download the task sheet for 2.2 of Unit 7. Write a brief assessment on how useful you found the feedback. Be objective as possible. Remember, criticism is usually always given with good intention and is not meant as an insult to you or your abilities. So don't take this feedback too personally. So we're carrying on with the development of your level, and hopefully you've had some good feedback from things that have happened during the playtesting. Maybe you've got way too many enemies in the level that makes it impossible. Possibly somebody gets stuck on a certain part or a puzzle. These are the kind of things that you want to change now, and give it another run through, possibly do a second round of playtesting. and then record these different changes that you've made to your game based on the feedback. After you've done this second wave of feedback and playtesting, it's time to just finish your game level. Get it done. Get it done to a level that you're happy and you feel like it's, hard enough or easy enough to have people enjoy the game. That's the main thing that you're wanting to do. One of the best ways that we're going to be able to mark your work is if you can actually record a video of the level being played itself. This negates having to download a complete build and then have the examiners open up that build and be able to play. So if we can just see a video example, then that is going to be a lot easier, and upload that video to the G drive. So how do you record gameplay in Unity? Well, there is an extremely handy free Unity plugin called Unity Recorder. And for those of you that have been working with 2018.4 version of Unity, this recorder is downloadable from the Asset Store, whereas anything from 2019 above, you'll be downloading the Unity Recorder from the Package Manager, which is inside the engine. So let's check out the video now.
There are two ways of importing the official package to your project. One from the Asset Store, and it will work only if you have an old version of Unity, like for example Unity 2018, and from the Package Manager if you have Unity 2019 or higher. I will show you both ways for your convenience. And if you are unsure about what version of Unity you are currently using, you can find it in the upper left corner of Unity window itself. Alright, let's start with an old version. You can skip this part if you have Unity 2019 or higher. Let's go ahead and download the official Unity Recorder package from the Asset Store. Let's switch to the Asset Store tab and search for Unity Recorder. The search result will give you a few options, and you need the one that is free and released by Unity Technologies. Again, please make sure that your version of Unity is compatible with this recorder, otherwise it will not work and you'll be disappointed. Let's click Import and a new window will pop up. Let's click Import button and Unity will start importing the package. Once this process is completed, you can switch to the Scene tab. If you are using Unity 2019 or newer, you can download Unity Recorder from the Package Manager. Let's go to Window and choose the Package Manager. A new window with a list of packages will pop up. Now, most likely you will not see Unity Recorder in the list right away, so you'll need to click on Advanced and choose Show Preview Packages. Now you can see it. Let's click Install and the installation will start. Once it is completed, you can close the Package Manager window. Now, let's go ahead and configure our recorder. By the way, the configuration is the same for the old and the new version. You'll need to go to Window, General, Recorder, and choose Recorder Window. A new window will open, and here is how it looks like. Let's start with adding a new recorder. You have a few options here, but for the gameplay, I recommend choosing the movie option. Great! Now we have a few more things to configure here. First, you can choose the video format, and I recommend leaving it as MP4, as it is a standard format supported pretty much by any software. Next, you can choose a file name, and here is something very important. If you don't change your file name, next time you record a gameplay video, Unity will overwrite your video file. This can be very frustrating, as you can lose a good take. To prevent that from happening, let's configure a wildcard. Press the Wildcards button and choose a wildcard from the list. I usually choose Take. What wildcard does, it basically adds a variation to the file name. In our case, it is a take number. And every time you record a new take, Unity will create a new video file for that take. Now, let's proceed to another important setting, which is the output resolution. By default, it will match the game window size, but we want a better quality than that. So let's set the resolution to Full HD. You can choose an even higher quality if you want to. Alright, now let's go ahead and press Start Recording. Once the recording starts, you can see that the recorder counts the frames. This is how you know that the recording is on. you can put the Recorder tab aside and switch to the game view. Once you've done, you can turn the recording off by pressing Stop Recording or by simply exiting the play mode. Now, if you'll go to your Recordings folder, you will find a new video file there. That brings us to the end of this tutorial.
By now you've got a working level, you've made a recording of that level, and you've been filling in the task sheets, and that's more than enough to be able to pass the course. Some of you are going to want to go over and above just a pass and be able to get a merit or a distinction. So we're going to have a look at a couple of ways that you'll be able to do this. Let's define what merits a distinction. So according to the external examiner's notes on how to get a distinction, the learner will have a detailed understanding of the key concepts and how they interlink. They will demonstrate originality in the consistent, effective application of technical processes, resources, techniques and materials relevant to the vocational area and level of study. Tasks will be completed to a level that far exceeds the minimum standard, with few or no errors, and learners will select and use appropriate skills and processes justifying their choices. So you'll want to be diving a lot deeper into things like how Unity works, or be able to do a lot more of a detailed study on the feedback and the playtesting. The best way by far to exceed the original brief for this unit is to learn Unity on your own time and produce game levels that are stunning. I'm going to put some links in the description to a number of different tutorial videos and tutorial resources for the Unity game engine. First and foremost, you want to go to the unity3d.com website and look at their Learn section. In there you'll find a lot of resources and tutorials about how exactly to use the engine. There is also things like Create with Code, which is more to do with 3D games and a bit more to do with how to work C# into your projects. So these are extremely digestible and easy to follow tutorials which Unity have come up with. Also, there are many YouTube channels. One of the best is Brackeys, and these are all game development tutorials. Lots and lots of different stuff there about lots of different aspects of game development, mostly inside Unity, so that's great. Some of you may be thinking that using the 2D game kit in Unity is cheating somewhat. And when I say this, I mean that you will have dragged in pre-made assets and just kind of be building the same looking level as your peers in the class. So one of the things that you might want to do is try a different game engine. One of the ones out there that's very good for 2D stuff is something called Stencil, which is completely free to use. And you can sort of import your own sprites, tailor-make your gameplay to make it more in line with your original story idea. So I just suggest giving it a go, and I'm going to leave a video running at the end of this in order to show you exactly how to get started with Stencil. Thanks for watching. That's been Unit 7, and good luck with everything in the unit, and I'll see you again in another unit tutorial for Enemy of Boredom. Thank you very much.
In this video, we're going to look at how to make a game in Stencil. Now, you may have used Scratch to make a game, and you can make some really cool games in Scratch, but in Stencil you can take it a little bit further. So, how do you make a game in Stencil? Start by creating a new game, which is going to be a blank game. Let's give it a name. And in the size, I'm going to go for a game which is 800 by 600. That's kind of old school, but at least it's something to start with. And let's create that. Now in Stencil, for some reason, we have different words to mean the same thing in every other game. So for example, in other games you have characters, in Stencil you have actors. Backgrounds are what you're going to have in the background of your levels. And talking about levels, in Stencil levels are called scenes. So you'll hear me using both words to describe the same thing. That's to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. So let's create our first level, or our first scene. And I'm going to call it level 1. It's really useful if you call your levels by their level numbers rather than some random name. It makes your life much easier later on. So here we go. This is our first level, and of course we have nothing here. It's a white rectangle with nothing in it. So let's go back to our dashboard and let's take some kind of character. Now I haven't made a character, so what I'll do is I'll click on that Stencil Forge button over there, and Let's go to actors, and I'm going to grab this small crocodile here. It's a very quick download, and it should just be waiting for us in about a second. And here we go. Later on we'll talk about how to animate our characters or our actors so that their feet move or their arms move or their eyes move. But for now, let's keep it simple and just put things into our game. While we're on Stencil Forge, let's go to the backgrounds, and let me grab, randomly, let me just grab this universe one. This will take a little bit longer. You can see it's a little bit bigger than our crocodile, so it should take 3 or 4 seconds to come in. And once it's there, we've got the beginnings of a new game, and I'll show you how to put them all together. Now, while we're waiting for that, it's interesting for you to note that dashboard is where you go when you're looking for an overview of your game. So right now you can see I've got one actor or one character, that's my crocodile here. You can see I've got one background, which is my universe background, and I've got one level, which is level 1. So what we'll do is I'm just going to close these other tabs. So here we have the dashboard, and what we want to do is go into our backgrounds over here, and what we want to do is we want to put this background into our level 1. So I'm going to attach to a scene, remembering that a scene is a level, and press OK there. And you should see my background will now sit inside that level there. That's perfect. What I'm then going to do is go back to my dashboard, go back to my actors, double click my crocodile just to check if he's okay. So here's my crocodile, and I want to put that into my level 1. So I'm going to add to scene, choose level 1, press OK, and you can see he's here. But before we go any further, I've got to tell you we've got a problem. I want you to look down in this right hand corner over here, and you can see that my background, which was called universe, is sitting on its own layer. That's pretty good. Now, a character or an object or anything that's in a game cannot go on the same layer as a background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the next layer down, which is called layer 0, and you can still see the crocodiles there, but he's now going behind the background. That's okay, let's just click him there, and you can see I've kind of left him there. Go over here and click the black arrow, and we do have a problem because our character, which is here, is behind our background. Really easy to fix. So let's go to our layer, which now has our crocodile in it, pick it up, and just move it above our background layer, and that's all you need to do. So we have our crocodile on top of the background, and now we're ready to begin making our game and moving our character and doing whatever else we want to do. So that's a very quick introduction on how to get a background, a level, and a character into a game in Stencil.